Hi everyone, thanks so much for watching my lecture and thanks for giving me some great questions. So the first question is, how do you have the patience to sit in one area for so long and keep your mind focused on what you're doing? That's a great question, Malik. There's quite a lot of times when I don't have the patience, especially when bugs are biting or it's super hot or cold or I'm just tired. During those times I tell myself to just sit and draw 10 minutes and then it's okay to leave. Inevitably, I'll get drawn in and I'll get involved and I'll be able to focus for at least 10 minutes. And before I know it, half an hour will go by. I also realize that sketching outside takes practice and getting used to doing it. It really helps to be sketching something you're interested in because then you're also learning about it as well. Generally, I know that I can focus for anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, then I take a little break and come back and finish. The next question is from Shiraz, who asked, have you ever seen one of the fires they set in the prairies which help plants grow? No, I haven't seen any of the official fires that are done at the prairies. The closest I've ever come is the day after, when some piles of wood were still burning and smoke was in the air. I have seen my neighbor burn her prairie yard and even got to help one year. It was super hot and a little disconcerting knowing that this fire was not in a fire pit. It was my job to watch it and make sure it kept within its boundaries. Fortunately, there were a lot of people there helping, and my neighbor's been doing them for a long time. You definitely need training to do these, and I would never try anything like that myself. The next question is from Miriam, who asks, how would you go about nature journaling or drawing landscapes if you're just not good at drawing? That's a really good question. It's always difficult, especially as an adult, to try something new. When we're kids, we're always trying new things, and it's okay not to be good at it. And if you like the activity, then you keep doing it, and eventually you get better. As an adult, though, it seems like we expect ourselves to be good at something when we first start. Personally, I've been practicing landscapes for years, and I don't consider myself good at them at all. They are hard for me. I get overwhelmed with the details. I try and use big brushes to prevent me getting overwhelmed, as well as time limits, so I don't get stuck trying to make tiny little flowers in a giant landscape. The nice thing about nature journaling is that it's your own personal observations. You can look at a flower, notice how many petals it has, see what shape they are and how they're attached and try to draw it. Most things can be simplified into basic shapes like circles and ovals. Write down what you see to fill in where it's too hard to draw. Just like the drawing on the right, see how those flower shapes can be simplified into ovals? And even the landscape on the left. The flowers don't have hardly any details, but you can tell that they are pale purple coneflowers. You can tell that the prairie dock leaves, the big teardrop shaped things. So even though that is a landscape, they're simple shapes. Remember that the purpose is not to have a pretty drawing, but to learn something about the world around you. If you're learning, you're growing, and I really hope you try. The next question is from Michael. What was the most difficult plant or insect that you've had to draw? And how long does it typically take you to complete a sketch? I think dragonflies are difficult to draw because their proportions are so weird. They have very long wings and a slender abdomen coupled with a large head, but I love them all the same. The dragonfly on the left is a more finished drawing. I was able to use a microscope and measure it from a specimen. The sketch on the right, I was in the prairie and I happened to see a dragonfly land on a piece of grass. So that one probably only took 10 or 15 minutes because that's all I had before it flew away. And as you compare the two, you can see I didn't quite get the proportions right. So I even tried it again on the same page because I noticed I didn't have a neck on the dragonfly and my thorax was all wrong. So it's fun to see that in a sketch, how that differs. In terms of plants, it seems like a lot of the prairie plants are difficult, but especially lead plant on the left, which I've yet actually to do a detailed drawing, blazing stars in the middle, and asters on the right. With some of these more difficult plants, generally I try and sketch simpler versions on site and fill in the details when I get back to the studio. So generally a plein air session will take anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour, but it depends on what I'm trying to do. In the winter, it's more like 15 to 20 minutes. The next question is from Amber. How do moths defend themselves against predators if they can't bite? That's a great question, Amber. Moths have lots of ways to defend themselves, but the biggest is probably camouflage. Many hide during the day and fly at night. They have complicated patterns to blend into bark or ground litter, like the moth on the left. Some have flashy underwings to startle birds during the day. The polyphemus moth on the right has what looks like owl eyes that are used to deter birds. When it's startled, it opens its forewings to reveal the owl eyes underneath, and they think that startles the birds. Some moths mimic bees or wasps, like the one on the left. Others mimic leaves, like the sphinx moth on the right, and the one on the bottom is mimicking lichen. Here's an underwing moth who blends in perfectly with tree bark, yet if it's startled by a bird, it can flash these underwings and scare it. There are also other moths that actually have warning colors. Tiger moths have caterpillars that eat plants with chemicals that taste bad, like monarchs do, so they tend to be left well alone. However, when they fly at night, they can be eaten by bats, so these moths also make clicking sounds to deter the bats and confuse them. As you can see from this sketch page, there are a lot of different kinds of moths out there, and this doesn't even cover a fraction of them. Many of the moth caterpillars also have lots of hairs or spines that deter predators, or they hide in rolled up leaves. They also lay a lot of eggs, knowing that many will not make it to adulthood. There's just so much to learn about these hidden creatures. The next question is from Andrus. Do you ever encounter any creatures bigger than rodents in the prairies? So while they're not in every prairie, certainly, bison are the biggest animals on the prairie, and there are several places you can find them, including Medewa National Tallgrass Prairie, Nachusa Grasslands, and Kankakee Sands in Indiana. They're always behind an electric fence, and you can't actually get in the same place with them, but you can see them from outside the fence, and they're a reminder of what the prairies used to look like hundreds of years ago. Other than that, yes, I have seen coyotes at the Schulenburg Prairie and deer, but they didn't bother me. They just went off in a different direction. I've also seen short-eared owls, hawks, and herons at various prairies in the area. Several people also asked what my own personal favorite piece of artwork was, what did I create, and why did I enjoy the process. Since most of my artwork is based on things I've seen or experienced, anytime I can draw or sculpt the big silk moths, such as the cecropia on the left or the imperial moth on the right, I find that very enjoyable. It brings back memories of when I'd find their caterpillars or cocoons and bring them home to raise them through the stages. There's just something about their colors, size, and furry bodies and legs that have always appealed to me. Since I like them so much, I want to share my delight with others, so any way that I can find to bring them to life, whether through painting or sculpting, is a joy. Thanks again for watching.